Two nations, one history, and two completely different ways of remembering the same past. South Korea became a global cultural powerhouse, known for technology, K-pop, cinema, and economic success. North Korea became one of the most isolated and militarized states on Earth. Yet both countries once belonged to the same kingdom, the Joseon Dynasty. For over 500 years, Joseon ruled the Korean peninsula, shaping its language, traditions, architecture, and identity. But today, North and South Korea remember Joseon in completely different ways. In the South, Joseon is increasingly viewed as the cultural foundation of Korean society. In the North, it is remembered as a failed feudal system that proved revolution was necessary. So how did two nations with the same history end up seeing the past so differently? So today, let's answer the question of, why do North and South Korea see Joseon so differently? Joseon was the final unified Korean dynasty before the modern era. It was a rigid Confucian state ruled by a king with a deeply structured social hierarchy and a powerful bureaucracy. Many aspects of modern Korean culture, from language and etiquette to architecture and family traditions, were shaped during this period. But the end of Joseon was tragic. Years of bureaucratic failures, corruption, poor governance, and foreign influence weakened the kingdom. Over time, Joseon struggled to adapt to a rapidly changing world. Eventually, the Korean peninsula was annexed by Imperial Japan. Even though both North and South Korea shared the same history, they remembered Joseon in very different ways. And to understand why, we first need to look at South Korea. South Korea's perception of Joseon has changed dramatically over time. When South Korea was first established, the Joseon monarchy was not widely celebrated. The country's first president, Syngman Rhee, had actually been born during the Joseon era. He witnessed Korea's transition from Joseon to the Korean Empire and eventually fall under Japanese rule. Rhee understood Korea as a proud and independent nation, but he also believed that the monarchy and political system had failed to modernize alongside the rest of the world. And in his eyes, that failure contributed directly to Japan's takeover of Korea. Ironically, Syngman Rhee himself was a distant member of the royal Jeonju Lee clan. But despite that connection, he believed monarchy had no place in the new Republic of Korea. There was also a political concern. The former royal family could potentially become rivals to the authority of the new government. As a result, Rhee made little effort to support or restore the royal family. Some members struggled to return to Korea at all. Princess Deok-hye, for example, remained in Japan for years. Meanwhile, public opinion towards Joseon was complicated. Many Koreans blamed the corruption of the Yangban aristocratic class for social inequality and suffering. Living conditions during the late Joseon period were still remembered negatively by many citizens. But not everything from Joseon was rejected. Confucian values like educational achievement, family traditions, and social customs remained deeply respected. In many ways, these traditions became the foundation of modern South Korean society. The royal family remained largely ignored until the 1960s, when President Park Chung-hee came to power. Unlike Syngman Rhee, Park saw historical symbolism as useful for building national identity. He did not restore the monarchy or give the former royal family political power, but he believed they still had value as symbols of Korean heritage. Under Park, members of the former royal family who had effectively lived in exile were allowed to return to Korea. Prince Lee-eun, who had previously served in the Japanese military, returned alongside his Japanese-born wife, Princess Lee Bang-ja. Princess Deok-hye was also allowed to come back to Korea after years of institutionalization in Japan due to severe mental health struggles. Park permitted these former royals to live in Changdeokgung Palace, their former royal residence, for the remainder of their lives. At the same time, his government actively promoted Korean heritage. Historic palaces were restored, Confucian ideals were emphasized, traditional culture became closely tied to national pride. Joseon was no longer viewed simply as a failed monarchy, it was increasingly seen as part of Korea's historical identity. From the 1970s through the 1990s, South Korea underwent explosive economic growth and industrialization. The country focused on rebuilding after the Korean War, while also preventing the spread of communism from the north. As society modernized, Joseon became more distant in people's memories. It was still seen as culturally important, but politically outdated. Over time, however, criticism softened significantly. Then came another major shift. Beginning in the 2000s, Joseon's image experienced a major rehabilitation. Today, many South Koreans view Joseon's bureaucracy as relatively sophisticated for its time. The civil examination system, known as the Kwago, is often remembered as a strong merit-based institution. Historical dramas and films also played a huge role in reshaping public perception. Stories about kings, queens, scholars, and ordinary people living during Joseon became incredibly popular, both within Korea and internationally. These dramas humanized the dynasty. Rather than focusing only on corruption or decline, they highlighted Joseon's culture, traditions, and emotional stories. In modern South Korea, the royal palaces, traditions, and historical figures of Joseon are often celebrated as the foundations of Korean society itself. While people still recognize its flaws, Joseon is now remembered far more positively than it once was. North Korea, however, developed a completely different interpretation of Joseon. Although it shares the same pre-colonial history, North Korea does not focus on nostalgia for the monarchy or royal heritage. Instead, Joseon became a historical example used to justify revolution. In North Korean ideology, Joseon is portrayed as a feudal and oppressive society. The suffering of peasants and corruption of the Yangban elite are emphasized heavily. This interpretation aligned perfectly with Marxist-Leninist ideology, much of which came from the Soviet Union. According to this worldview, history is driven by class struggle and revolution, and Joseon represented a system that deserved to collapse. North Korean historical narratives place enormous importance on resistance movements. This includes rebellions against the Yangban class system during Joseon, resistance against Japanese colonial rule, and opposition to foreign imperial influence. These themes became central to the legitimacy of the North Korean state itself. This revolutionary narrative is one reason Kim Il-sung became so important to North Korea's identity. Kim Il-sung fought against the Japanese as a guerrilla fighter and strongly aligned himself with communist ideology promoted by both the Soviet Union and China. To North Korea, this represented strength. The lesson of history, according to the regime, was clear. Joseon's weak monarchy failed. Revolutionary leadership succeeded. This idea became central to North Korean political identity. Strong leadership and revolutionary ideology were portrayed as the reason Korea could resist foreign domination, the exact opposite of what happened during Joseon's collapse. But even North Korea does not completely reject Joseon. Certain achievements are still respected. The creation of Hangul is viewed as a major cultural achievement, and many historical architectural sites located in the north are carefully preserved. So while the monarchy itself is criticized, Joseon is still acknowledged as part of Korean national identity. The difference is simple. North Korea sees Joseon as proof that revolution was necessary. South Korea sees Joseon as the cultural foundation of Korean society. And as the two countries evolve separately, politically, economically, and socially, their interpretations of history drifted further apart. Yet despite everything, both nations remain connected to the same dynasty, the same language, the same traditions, and the same historical roots. No matter how differently North and South Korea remember Joseon, neither can deny its importance in shaping the two Koreas that exist today. This is no more evident than in the naming structure of the country names. In Korean, North Korea refers to itself as Joseon, as it was over 100 years ago. South Korea is called Daehanmin국, with the Daehan taken from Daehanje국, or the Korean Empire, which was the successor state to Joseon. History is never just about the past. Sometimes, it becomes a reflection of what a nation wants to believe about itself. And nowhere is that more visible than on the Korean peninsula. If you like this video, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more videos just like this.